everybody, Fun Princess here, back with another video for you guys, and today we're going to do something that is not Lolita, but very much in the spirit of the season, and it is doing my top 10 horror books. So I love terrifying literature, movies, video games, you name it. I've probably wanted to see it, or have seen it, or read it. But I just want to share with you guys what my top 10s are to give you guys a bit of inspiration if you're looking for something to do, since you may or may not be stuck at home depending on which country / part of the curve you're in with COVID. So anyways, I will let you guys know what my tops are, and if you guys have any recommendations, don't hesitate to let me know what some of your favorites are. So my first pick, in no particular order, is The Troop by Nick Cutter. It's essentially the story of a bunch of Boy Scouts that get stuck on an island, and then there's this sick, emaciated man that arrives and is begging for food, which they do give to him, but he keeps eating and eating, and he doesn't seem to be satiated in any way, shape, or form. And they find out that something is very, very wrong with this man, and he is very sick. This book is more of the gross out type of horror story, so it isn't as much of a psychological ride, but it is very much of a thrill ride. I found that this book was very, very fun. The characters were all interesting, and the plotline just kept going and going, and I didn't feel bored in any way, shape, or form while reading this, which is why it is on my top 10. So let me know if you've read it or if you're interested. My next pick is Pen Pal by Dathan Urbach. Essentially, this is a story of somebody trying to make sense of some of their creepy childhood memories. The reason why it's in this list is because if you guys have ever read creepypasta off of the internet, so those are really short and creepy stories that leave you feeling kind of unsettled. This whole book is built like that. So at the end of every chapter, there's a portion where it'll just be really, really creepy and leave you feeling very unsettled. For example, towards the beginning of the book, and I'm not going to spoil anything significant, but like the little boy receives a bunch of like Polaroid photographs, and towards the end of the chapter, he just doesn't make any heads or tails with. He keeps receiving these photographs from an anonymous source, and they're all about random stuff. Once he lays them all out in his room, he finds out that he's in the background of every single one of them. So that means that somebody took his picture. You know, it's things like that that keep you kind of on the edge of your seat. Believe me, I inhaled this book in an evening. Like, I just could not stop. I really do think that it's an interesting take on horror. It's really one of the only books that is written like this. Very entertaining. Not necessarily great literature, but definitely worth a read. My next pick is Suffer the Children from Craig D. Louis. Very unsettling book, very creepy. So imagine a world, and this is not a spoiler, it's literally on the back of the book, but where essentially all children across the earth would die at the exact same time. The chaos, how people would be completely freaked out, the grief, absolutely terrifying. The way that it is written here, you can really imagine it going down that way in real life. I was heartbroken and I felt sick while reading this, but the creepy part doesn't come from just the kids dying, because they don't stay dead. The children, they rise up from the dead, and then they go back to their parents, and they have very specific dietary needs that their parent needs to fill. It becomes real creepy real fast, and it's kind of seeing a society devolve and how far are parents willing to go for their children. I found this book to be a riveting read. I mean, it already sounds kind of insane when I say it like that, but really the way that it is written, I adored this book. So really, I do recommend it if you're looking into it. Yeah, this is really a big recommend for me. My next pick is Summer of Night by Dan Simmons. So for all of you fans of Stephen King's It, if you're itching for another book that's sort of in the same vein, Summer of Night is definitely the book for you. Or even if you have a Stranger Thing addiction and you're looking for more stuff that has that same type of feel, this book is around a group of young kids around 12 years old that essentially really creepy things start happening. Kids go missing, they see what they think might be dead people, but it's like this tight-knit group of 12-year-olds in this small town that are trying to make heads or tails with, where of course the adults don't believe them in any way, shape, or form, and they have to kind of take care of themselves and solve the mystery of what is going on with their town. I found this read to be very creepy because it's more about the perspective of the lack of control that kids have, where people are like, oh, it's make-believe, right? It's not serious. But also the friendship that's between this group of friends. And, you know, this book is pretty brutal. If you're expecting all the kids to be happy and healthy and woohoo by the end of the book, trauma is gonna happen, but definitely a very interesting read. It is kind of a hefty book though, so you have to commit to it, but it is so rewarding, and Dan Simmons had such a way of writing characters. I just really loved the character exploration in this book, so really it is a very high recommendation from me. My next pick is The Graveyard Apartment by Mariko Koike. Essentially, this is a book about a Japanese take on horror stories. And what I found really interesting from Paperbacks from Hell, which was from Grady Hendrix, was that his analysis of why ghost stories became such a big thing and why people are very much into it. It's because of this fear of buying property and being stuck with like hidden damages. And as, you know, property prices go up, it's more and more difficult to get housing. And this whole theme that, you know, Grady Hendrix was speaking about is very much present in this book, because it's about a happy, you know, husband and wife buying a property in this apartment building where they think everything is so new, it looks fantastic, etc. But, you know, graveyard apartment is because, you know, graveyards are afoot. Like, there's one like really close to the house, and of course that kind of seeps into the house. Why I picked this book over the plethora of other haunting books is because by the end of the book, really, the ending is what killed me, because I was reading this and I literally got chills running up my spine towards the end. And I'm not going to spoil anything. I won't get into how the hauntings manifest in this book. Some of it is things that if you've read a lot of these, you might have seen before, but the way that it is approached with a very kind of Japanese flair really sold it to me. And as I said, the closing sequence was just absolutely chilling to me. So it ended up being a 5-star read for me. By the way, all of these books are what I consider to be 5-star reads, but really if you're into haunting stories, this is definitely a good pick. I would recommend it. My next pick, and I apologize for the battered copy, I kind of bought this at a thrift store. I am getting a newer copy brought in because I just love this book so much that I want it to be pristine, but it's The Ruins by Scott Smith. So this is a crazy cuckoo read about a group of, you know, people just traveling that end up going to these ruins because they're just like, oh, let's go explore and let's find our friends, etc. And they end up getting trapped on this hill where there's kind of ruins going on, thus the title of the book. But something is living in the ruins, and I'm not gonna spoil too much of it. There's also been a movie that's been created from this book, though I would say that the book has a lot more scares and it's a lot more visceral than what the movie showcased. That being said, the movie's okay, like it's not amazing, but really the book, some bits and pieces I was like, oh boy, they went there with some of the scary sections. I was just not expecting it. And it's definitely not one of those things that you've seen 1,000 times before. It's really a unique type of horror. But if you're looking for something that has a bit of exploration and mystery, and definitely some gore and some craziness happening, because these people do get stranded, I'm not gonna spoil anything. This is definitely an excellent read. You will blaze through this like you wouldn't guess. It's absolutely amazing, so I would recommend it. My next recommendation, you will have guessed it probably, but it's The Shining from Stephen King. Though I could have put a lot of his work on this list, to be honest. Pet Sematary to me is a close second in my heart, but The Shining, the book, even though the movie is also excellent, I would say that the book is a lot better. Especially for the portrayal of the wife, who's she's a stronger character in this than in the movies. In the movies, she's like a kind of bubbling idiot that is scared of everything from the start and is like a wilting flower. In this book, she's actually really trying to protect her son, like, and she has a lot more personality. But more than that, there's a lot more scares, and if you love the Shining universe, there's a lot to this book that isn't a part of the movie. So really, for those that might not have seen the movie, it's about a couple with their son, you know, kind of taking care of this hotel in the middle of winter, stuck in the middle of nowhere, like no connections to the outside world, and things go wrong, and there's definitely hauntings going on because their kid has the shine. So he essentially has powers that allows him to communicate with ghosts, which kind of triggers something, right? And this is about how things escalate and go completely out of control. I adored this book. It was amazing. So I would definitely recommend it. And if you like Stephen King or even the movie, like really, it's worth reading it, even if you've seen it 1,000 times. So yeah, it's a good one for sure. My next pick is This Book is Full of Spiders by David Wong. So this book is cuckoo crazy. It's more of a comedy / horror book, and it's the second in a series. So John Dies at the End is the first book. It is quite crazy, but the second one is definitely crazier. It all has to do with a new drug that they call the soy sauce that looks like soy sauce, but essentially if you end up having it in your system, causes a bunch of unexpected side effects. And just like what this book is titled with, this book is really filled with spiders. Spiders coming out of mouths, spiders coming out of eyes, spiders coming out of everywhere. I can't really talk too much about the why without getting into plot reasons, so I won't really spoil anything, but it's absolutely completely nuts. You will blaze through this and read it and go like, what the heck did I just read? It feels like, you know, a surprise lobotomy almost, but it's absolutely crazy and creepy and completely worth it. The stakes are high, the characters are crazy, the action is absolutely insane. Like, there are no two series like this. So to be honest, you know, if you like that type of stuff, like movie-wise, if you like Cabin in the Woods, you know, Dale and Tucker vs. Evil, any of the other movies along those lines that are more of a mix of comedy and horror, you owe it to yourself to read this series. It's crazy. I haven't read the third one yet, but the second one was just completely blowing me away, so really worth it. My next pick is Let Me In by John Lindquist. Essentially, it's a book that was made into 2 movies, one original European version and then an American remake that kind of watered down certain concepts from the book. It is a vampire novel, but it's take in a very disturbing manner. This book kind of deals with very creepy pedophilia and like what it means when you're looking like a child forever, and very gruesome murders that feel like an inevitable, despair-filled outcome. This book has more angst than any teenage book ever hopes to achieve. It's not YA, by the way. Please, it's not for young adults. But this book has kind of deep exploration and despair, and it just really stuck with me. This feels like a winter blizzard in regards to feeling. You feel like you're stuck in it, and it's just so cold and so filled with despair. And in the middle of it, there's this child trying to reach out to what he thinks is another child. Not a child, by the way, but that's from the beginning of the book. Not spoiling anything. And he's trying to relate, but is having so much difficulties, and he ends up trying to find friendship in somebody who's not even human. And it's hard really to explain kind of where this book goes, but my god, is it a head trip. It made me think for a long time after I finished reading it. I really do recommend it. And the movies, plural, they don't do it justice, either one of them, because of course there's a lot more content than what can fit in a single movie. So I would say that it is very much worth reading the original works for that. It's really a great book. Read it. My final pick out of the 10 is Merciless by Daniel Vega. So technically I could have put all of the books because I feel like they're really part of a unit. It's like one continuous story. My favorite one is actually not this one, it's the third one, but I couldn't find it in my shelf, and it's halo colored, like multicolored rainbow with a pentacle. Anyways, they look really crazy, her books, but it's essentially a possession story that is a mix between Mean Girls and The Exorcist. Though heavy on The Exorcist and lighter on the Mean Girls portion, but it's such a blend that is unique and full of like viciousness and bullying, and it kind of takes the concept of like vicious adolescents, but what if you were possessed and murdery instead of just like a bitch? Very interesting series. Even though technically this is YA, it is a part of my top, and to be honest, I don't know how they got away with it, with how much gore and cruelty and misery there is in those books, because I wouldn't have said that it was YA just reading this series. But really, like, the first book is good, but it's not amazing, and then second, third, fourth, they all build on top of it to create this universe that is completely nuts. There is murder, torture, sexual abuse, like, you name it, there's all kinds of stuff in these books. To me, I love The Exorcist too. I didn't fit it in this list, but it's also a 5-star read. But this is a really good spiritual successor to that type of universe, because it really does go into kind of the depraved psychological areas of possession, which is why I love, you know, the Exorcist, the original work. But this is really kind of in that vein. I would really recommend this series to you guys if you feel like exploring something that's a little bit different, because maybe the descriptor Mean Girls and Exorcist feels like eh, but if you're a fan of The Exorcist, you're probably going to enjoy it. But really a crazy series. I would heavily recommend them. And then a special recommendation. So I had my top 10, which were, you know, for my English public. No, I'm gonna redo that. That was awful. So I did my top 10 that was filled with my 10 favorite English books, but I wanted to sneak an extra one in there for anybody that's might be from French-speaking countries, because I do think that it's worth shining a light on some authors, and I want to give a spotlight to a local author to Quebec, which is Dieu parmi les hommes by Sylvain Johnson. Essentially, this book is more of a fantasy, but to be honest, when I was reading it, I was like, okay, this is totally horror. The premise of this book, it's kind of like, I think the movie was called Brightburn, kind of a take of what would happen if an alien child that was superpowered, similar to Superman, ended up with the most screwed up family ever. So a father that would abuse him, like alcoholic, complete abuser, rapist, you name it, like complete trash, right? The mother isn't so, but she's stuck in this vicious abuse cycle, and then this child is trying to make heads or tails of the situation and to grow out of it. But this book, I would classify it more as a psychological horror tale, because you can kind of, you feel bad for the kid and seeing kind of where his life takes him, but at the same time, what he does is absolutely terrifying. And what can you do to really stop a superpowered human that cannot be stopped by any means? Absolutely a crazy tale. I feel like it's way better than the movie that kind of took a similar premise, and it's also really darker because you get into the head of this kid. It just goes completely bananas, and I mean, trigger warnings, because there was a lot of really screwed up stuff that happens here, but really such an amazing book I found. I completely devoured it. So if you guys know how to speak French, or you want to practice, or, you know, I don't think it's been translated, but if ever it does, just remember this book, because it's definitely a worthwhile read. I hope that you guys liked my 10 picks plus one, and that you're interested in reading some of those. But either way, let me know in the comments below what type of horrifying media you're listening to, reading, playing, whatever the case may be. I'm definitely interested in that. It is the month for it. But if you guys want to follow me on Instagram or Facebook, please feel free to do so. Or to join the Baby Bat family on Patreon to help support this whole show, please feel free to do so as well. I hope that you guys are going to be snuggling up with some blankets and eating a lot of candy and staying safe and watching a lot of horror movies, reading horror books, or playing horror video games, and that you'll take care. I just hope that everybody's going to be well and healthy, but we will talk soon, guys, okay? So until next time, bye!